Every fantasy football player knows the Chiefs have one of the most explosive offenses in the league. But how about the rest of the AFC West? How do their offensive coordinators and coaches stack up to Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy? Let's bring on SI senior fantasy analyst Michael Fabiano. And Fabs, I know you did a deep dive into all the offensive schemes and the head coaches and the OCs. Let's start off by going with the Chargers. They have a new staff, and Joe Lombardi leaves New Orleans. He is now the OC for the Los Angeles Chargers. What do you think is going to happen with some of their playmakers?
Well, Lombardi has compared Austin Eckler to Alvin Kamara, which is a nice comparison because, well, both guys, maybe the two best pass-catching running backs in the National Football League, not named Christian McCaffrey, right? And Lombardi learned from Sean Payton during his time as the QB's coach in New Orleans. And, Payton likes to throw the ball to his running backs, whether it's Ben Kamara or Reggie Bush or Darren Sproles for that matter. Running backs get a lot of usage in the passing game. So when you look at Lombardi's 1+ seasons as an offensive coordinator in Detroit, Joique Bell, remember him, and Theo Riddick combined for 111 catches out of the backfield. So if Eckler can avoid injuries, which was an issue last year, I think, Bill, he's going to easily bring back top 15 value at the position. This is a guy who's going to be very heavily utilized in that passing game for Lombardi from Justin Herbert.
PPR platinum type of season from Austin Eckler in 2021 coming to a fantasy team near you. Let's move over to the Denver Broncos, where Pat Shurmur, second year with that AFC West team. What do you make of their receivers under Shurmur?
Well, Shurmur's offenses have produced just 2 top 10 wide receivers in fantasy football. That's it. Adam Thielen in 2017, and then Jeremy Maclin in 2014. What's more, just 4 wide receivers have hit the 1,000-yard mark in a Pat Shurmur offense. The last one to do it was Odell Beckham Jr. in 2018. Maclin is also the lone wide receiver to score double-digit touchdowns under Shurmur, although he has had several wide receivers score 8+ times in a single season, 7 wide receivers, in fact. So here's the issue. The Broncos have a very crowded core of wide receivers. Courtland Sutton's coming back from injury. Jerry Jeudy's in the mix. Tim Patrick is in the mix. KJ Hamler. This is an offense that's got a lot of mouths to feed. And the fact that Shurmur's offenses have really never produced an elite wide receiver and only 2 top 10s, well, I feel like maybe we need to temper our expectations for some of these guys. I'd say Sutton and Jerry Jeudy are probably the most attractive. Both of those wide receivers can be picked as wide receiver 3s. But unless there's injuries, the ceilings for both of those players could be a little bit lower based on Shurmur's past offenses.
I've been eyeing up Noah Fant, their tight end, as a pretty a late round pick. If you do wait on tight end, Fant has always been very productive in his limited time in the NFL. Let's move over to the Kansas City Chiefs. Like I said at the top, I mean, we all know they are the most explosive offense in the league, whether it's Mahomes, Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They have plenty of playmakers. But how about the secondary group of guys? Someone like Mecole Hardman. What does Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid's kind of scheme fit into how these, secondary or maybe afterthought type of playmakers for the Chiefs? How does that all play out?
Well, we love the Chiefs offense because it's so explosive, and Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in fantasy football and maybe the National Football League right now. But this is the problem. They funnel the ball to 2 players, basically, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. And we love that for those 2 players because they're almost always superstars. I mean, Kelsey's been the tight end 1 5 straight seasons, and Tyreek Hill's been tremendous over the last 3 or 4 years. But that funneling of the football to those 2 players really cuts the value of anybody else. So we talk about Mecole Hardman. Well, maybe he could be a sleeper. Well, did you know that no wide receiver under Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, not named Tyreek Hill, has finished better than 50th in fantasy points? 50th. All right. So, and you also look historically at Andy Reid. Tyreek Hill and Terrell Owens are the only 2 wide receivers in Andy Reid's offenses who have been superstars from a statistical perspective. Deshaun Jackson also had a couple of good seasons under Reid in Philadelphia. But the bottom line here is that we like Hardman because he reminded us of Tyreek Hill. He's got a similar skill set. Sammy Watkins is no longer in the mix. But if you look at the trends, Mecole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle, any of those guys, you can't really expect too much because the Chiefs have really leaned on those two top receivers in Hill and Kelsey, and everyone else has gotten, well, specks and crumbs of targets from Mahomes.
Yeah, Hardman, Pringle, and Robinson a little bit better for DFS type purposes than season long fantasy football. All right, let's close out the AFC West coaching breakdown by talking about the Las Vegas Raiders and John Gruden. What did you find during your research?
In his latest tenure with the Raiders, he hasn't had a top 30 wide receiver, right? I mean, historically, his system has produced a total of 7 top 10 fantasy finishes among wide receivers. Another 5 have finished wide receiver 12 to 20. But those were all back when he was with the Raiders in his first tenure. That was Jerry Rice. That was Tim Brown. Well, now in the Las Vegas version of the Raiders under Gruden, the highest fantasy finisher among wide receivers, Nelson Aguilar last season at wide receiver 34. So that doesn't seem like good news for the likes of John Brown, Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards. I feel like Ruggs probably has the highest ceiling of that trio, but you have to temper expectations because we know where the ball's going. It's going to Darren Waller. It's going to the backs and Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake. And unfortunately, there's not going to be a whole heck of a lot left for Brown, Ruggs, and Edwards. So if you draft them, they shouldn't be picked as anything more than wide receiver 4s or 5s. Simply put, Gruden's wide receivers have not been beneficial to fantasy managers in this second tenure with the Raiders.
We have plenty more great fantasy football insight from Michael Fabiano and the rest of the fantasy analysts from Sports Illustrated. You can check it all out. Go to si.com/fantasy.